Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for this episode, or wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you guys are listening to us on. As always, thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you for the kind messages, emails, tweets, everything that you've sent me or the show's way. Really appreciate it. Keep that stuff coming, and thank you for joining us here for this episode. We are going to be focusing today on guards and specifically guard development in this episode, and talking about how to get your guards to that next level and develop your guards so that they're good decision makers, good ball handlers, good shooters, just good across the board, and talking and exchanging some ideas with my guest about getting the most out of your guards and taking them to the next level. So this will be a lot of fun. I'm always looking for ways to get my guards better and just that much better. And I plan on learning just as much as y'all do from this episode as well. So, as always, I don't do this alone. I'm very happy to be joined by the head coach out at Willow Canyon. Coach Joseph Colletti is joining us here today. Coach, appreciate you coming on. How are you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. Yeah, excited to be here. Doing great today. It's a stormy Sunday afternoon, so just, sitting inside and thinking hoops.
Perfect. What could be better? What could be, especially if it's stormy out in Phoenix area where you and I are, to have clouds. I mean, we take that. So
we'll take it every day.
Coach, let's start with you and the game of basketball and your coaching journey and where it take you. Where did it take you, and ultimately how did you end up at Willow Canyon?
Yeah, so going into my 7th year as the head coach out at Willow Canyon High School, we're in the second largest classification in the state of Arizona, just under 2,000 students. And prior to that, I was an assistant coach at Liberty High School, which is in the largest classification. And they're at like 2,800 students now. Been at a couple other high schools, local, as an assistant coach as well. And, but yeah, man, started basically in 2004 as a volunteer assistant coach at a junior high school. And, I'd been around the game forever, played when I was a kid, and had my own circumstances in high school, which I think really kind of shaped me as a coach as well. I think a lot of players that become coaches, you look at your coach, your high school coach, and you say, there's a lot of things that he or she did that I like and I want to replicate that. Or there's a lot of things I really didn't like, and I kind of want to go be the opposite and give players what I didn't have. And that's kind of more my story. I always start the first day of tryouts, when you kind of gather all the kids before you start doing any drill work or anything like that. And I start with simply telling them, don't cut yourself. Don't do something in your character, in your attitude, in your effort that's going to allow our coaching staff to cross your name off the list. And I say that because that was me. I look back on my early high school experience. I was cut from my freshman team, and I 1,000% believe it's because I didn't have anybody prior to sit me down and say, hey, these are the things of how you carry yourself. This is how you act. This is, when you walk into the gym, address the coach. Hey, coach, how you doing tonight? Shake their hand, give them a fist bump, something like that, so that you connect, you honor their time in the gym. And I think that goes hand in hand with what, we're going to talk about later with development. But anyway, so kind of brought that in my own experience. Enjoyed being an assistant coach, but always had that itch to try to see if I could do my own thing and kind of see what we might be able to do. Took over Willow Canyon, played against them, thought they always had talent, just wasn't quite sure that they had the right leadership at that time. And man, it was it was tough, man. The first couple of years were really, really difficult.
Was it?
That first year could probably be about a 450-page book of just all the missteps that I took and all the chaos around the program. But really thankful. I think we have a great community. We have parents that get it, they support, and so yeah, looking forward to year 7 and kind of what the future might bring.
One of the things that you mentioned in our initial discussions that you were passionate about was holistic coaching. And so,
Yeah.
for those listening who may not exactly know what that means, what is holistic coaching, and why is that something that you are particularly passionate about?
Yeah, well, I think, that term is just it's all encompassing, right? And so holistically, how do you view your players? Like I'm not, yes, I want to win. I mean, don't get me wrong, as soon as the ball goes up and the referee blows the whistle, there don't talk to me for the next, 32 minutes of gameplay unless you're trying to help us win. Okay. But we're going to win some, we're going to lose some, we're going to hang some banners, we're going to miss out on opportunities. So if that's all we're focused on, I think we're going to miss a huge opportunity. And so from a holistic standpoint, we're starting with the end in mind. With we want them to be servant leaders. That's the big thing in our program. We have a mission, that is that we want to create servant leaders. So we're always looking at every little thing, from drills, from play calls, from off the court opportunities. If we're going to do some food together or travel together, how can we use all of it to help each player individually become a servant leader? So, I think from a coaching standpoint, just strictly in the gym, do you have a master plan? You know what I mean? Like I get I teach on campus, and we have a basketball class. So I see we have 37 boys between 2 different classes, and I see 19 of them 5 days a week for 45 to 50 minutes. How am I using that time to ensure that I can do everything that I can to learn about them as a person, to learn about their goals and their ambitions, to challenge them both in the classroom and on the court? And so a master plan of, dividing those 19 names between 5 days, right? So I check in on 4 guys every day, and challenging our coaching staff to do the same thing. And so text messages are flying. And then when you bring that onto the court, do you have connections between how you want to train ball handling to how you want to operate your offense to how you want to break a press? And can all those things be connected? So when I use the term holistic, like we have both a 30,000-foot view of everything that we're trying to do from 5th grade through 12th grade. And, we have some former guys that are college players currently, and we have some former college guys that are currently pros. They're in the gym. And so we occasionally get to train them. But, we have a master plan for if you enter our program in 5th grade, which is when we start our youth training, and you exit as a 12th grader, there's steps and markers so that we can accomplish what we want to accomplish. And like I said, trying to win is a small part of that, but it's much bigger than that.
So everything is intentional then. There's a purpose behind it all.
Absolutely.
And that plan, what was the process of sort of developing that plan from 5th to 12th? Have there been a lot of revisions and changes throughout the years? How did that come about? Yeah, what was that like?
Yeah, it's constantly being refined. So one of my coaching mentors, he has a goal to read 50 books every year. And I'm not quite on his level. I don't know that I ever will be. But I have a goal to read 20 every year. And they're in a variety of topics. I teach history, US history. So sometimes they're, biographical, sometimes they're biographies, sometimes they're leadership, whatever. But I'll try to pick up nuggets as I'm reading. And if I think it changes how we're doing something, how we approach. Another thing is we get feedback. We do a lot of, Google forms. We do a lot of informal response, close your eyes and share with, a response with your hand.
Yeah.
things like that to try to just get constant feedback on the process that we have. Is it working? Do we need to adjust? And then the coaches, we have 8 coaches on our coaching staff between all levels, 11 if you count our youth coaches. But we're constantly talking through text message, quick phone calls. We have multiple meetings, all that stuff. So just a lot of feedback and adjustment, and yeah, trying to, like I said, get to the end goal of creating servant leaders.
That is a lot. I can tell just from thinking about this that's a lot of effort and a lot of time that goes into it. But I imagine in your experience having done this, that the results, speak for themselves as to the type of men that they leave your program as, let alone just basketball players.
Yeah, that's the hope. I mean, love to be able
The
to
wins are great. I know.
for sure, for sure.
I want, as we transition to our topic of developing elite guards, I wanted to start first, Coach, with
Yeah.
your definition, because I know you'll see it on highlight films, you'll see it on
Yeah.
tweets. Oh, this guard's elite, the elite skill set, elite this, and I feel like
Yeah.
people can throw that word around a lot, and everyone has their own definition of what it is. So, what is your definition of what an elite guard, specifically at the high school level,
Yeah.
would like?
Well, I don't know that I've these days every single freshman walking into the gym is an elite player because that's what their AAU jersey says. Um, but no, for us, pretty simple. We define it as someone who can impact both ends of the floor at all times with or without the basketball. So, like just as simple as possible. How do you impact the game when you have the basketball in your hands? There might be a great shooter, but they're not a great playmaker. Well, you can't shoot it unless you have it. So, you know what I mean? Like, are you beating with your voice? Do you do a great job at cutting? Do you set screens for other teammates? Do you communicate? That's another one that we could probably spend a whole hour talking about is communication.
For
But
sure.
for us, we try to teach kind of a process to communicate both on offense and defense. So I look at it as, you can be a very, very, very good high school basketball player if when you have the ball, you impact the game. But going to that next level is, can you stop the other team's best player? Can you ensure that all 4 guys on the court with you, or young ladies on the court with you, know exactly where to be on defense, and you're doing that by quarterbacking the defense? To me, that is an elite guard. And we've got some young players that, I feel like have an opportunity. It might be the first time in my career where I've had multiple at the same time where I could put them on the court together. But they're in this place right now where they got to decide, do I want to be that? Because it's uncool. I got to talk. I got to dive on the floor. When my team or my teammates are on the sideline in practice, I got to be coaching them up, And
Yeah,
so
you are a coach.
yeah. So it's difficult, but I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to have, for the first time in 18 years, really to be able to have multiple elite guards to be able to put on the court. And yeah. So anyways, back to the simple question, which was, what do we define it as, real quick, was someone who can impact both ends of the court at all times with or without the basketball.
And I think I'll let you speak to this. I think the without the basketball part is from my experience has always been the part that's always been the hardest, is always the like you said, the cutting or the screening and how you impact the game, especially as a guard or a ball handler without the ball. And in my experience, that's always been something that I think needs a lot of time to develop, and that always has come, at least in my experience of coaching, has always been kind of the last thing that's really clicked with my players. I don't know if that's kind of been your experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because and also a lot of it depends on the age of the player.
Yeah.
I my daughter, for a little while, she's a club soccer player now, but for a year and a half, she wanted to play basketball as well. So I coached a team of 7th grade girls for a little while, which was very fun. I'll tell you what, man, there's absolutely a difference in the way that boys and girls absorb coaching. And
Mm-hmm.
I loved the questions that the young girls asked, and just the way that they process things. But I do think some variables are in there, like your age, obviously your skill level, because more skilled players typically have spent more time in a gym, and therefore they kind of have a deeper passion for it. You could have somebody walking off the street who's got a ton of God-given talent, but to go to those deeper levels, the intricacies, the details is really tough if they've not been in the gym, because you kind of got to fall in love, with the process
Yeah.
and with the gym in general, just to be in those details. So conceptual stuff is always really hard. So it's a lot of film, a lot of conversations, but I think you can make it real simple by asking questions. Why did you drive in that gap? Why did you make that pass? And then back to off the basketball, why did you close out the way that you did? When the shot went up, why did you go to that location to try to get the rebound? In a press, why did you pressure the way that you did? And a lot of times young players will answer, I don't know.
And they might not, and they might not really know. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then as a coach, I think you get to go, okay, well, what were the options? You know what I mean? Like you closed off the sideline, but you did so in a way where you gave up the middle. And so what other options could you have done so that the next time maybe you can be a little bit more thoughtful about that, right? But that again goes back to the intentionality. A lot of coaches, and I did this when I was real young, a lot of coaches will just scream and yell, hey, you got it, yeah. And you're missing a chance to really teach by getting the player to stop and think and consider, what else could I have done?
And I've said this before to other guests I've had conversations, and I completely agree with you. Is even having those conversations with your players will give you as a coach a lot of good feedback as to like what your players are thinking and what they're seeing. And it's such a nice way to like get in their heads so you can actually get and see their thought process and see what it is they're thinking. And it's like, oh, like I had no idea that this is what you saw, and I would never have thought of it that way. But now I know that this is what you're seeing or what you're thinking, and I can like go off of that rather than like just yelling at you or just assuming the worst about why you did or didn't do what you were supposed to do.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I think great coaches ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And okay, so we got guards, and you talked about this. You got guards coming in, and they're good, they're talented, they got the ability to be elite, and they need some training. They need some work to hit that next level. And so what training goes into getting those guards to that next level? What do you and your coaching staff intentionally work on with those guards to get them there?
Yeah, great question. So I got a couple thoughts here. The first one is that I think is kind of a backdrop.
Yep.
We film like everything that we possibly can. We might have a guest speaker. I'll film that so that the kids can see their body language. They can see how often are they taking notes. And that might be overkill for a lot of coaches. You might be hearing this as a high school coach and thinking, I would never do that. And that's totally fine, right? Like it's got to fit you. But the kids understand we film everything. So we could be in the middle of a training session and they'll ask a question and my answer is simple. I'll try to find that on film and we'll talk about it. And so knowing that we film everything, after a couple years, 1 or 2 years in the program, kids begin to ask for that. We teach them how to watch film. We teach them how to critique themselves. So that's kind of a backdrop for everything, I think.
Okay.
Tangibly on the court, one of the things that we do, we run a hybrid like dribble drive, 4 out, 1 in motion offense. And when we train to attack the paint, we attack the key from the perimeter. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll have a defender slapping a player, pushing a player, moving a player, and then their job is to fight through that and then execute whatever the skill that we're trying to train. So if we're training layups, if we're training floaters, if we're training attack, jump stop, kick out pass, we're going to do that with a kid having to fight off one of his teammates, literally pushing, slapping, clawing him. And the goal is, when we are in a game, it's going to be really hard to physically out tough us. Now, last year was a little bit of an anomaly. We played a lot of sophomores, a lot of freshmen in a very senior heavy region. And I think it's arguably the toughest region in the state. And every night was just a bloodbath. It was so difficult. But our boys never, ever, ever quit. And as a result of that, I think we're in a much better position this year. Still got to work, still got to put in the work. But anyway, so we do that. Another thing that we do is every single day we play one-on-one, whether it's 5 minutes, 20 minutes, but we'll do some version of one-on-one cutthroat. And we do progressive running. So at 3 points, you get a point for a basket or a point for a defensive stop. Each time a player gets to 3, every other player has to run an up back. So down and back the full length.
Yeah. Ooh,
and then yeah. And then, like I said, it gets progressive. So then the next game you restart it. Everybody's at 0. Now you got to run 2. Now you got to run 3. And so we've gotten up to as many as 12 up backs just playing one-on-one. And so just that incentive of, man, I'm tired, I don't want to run, and this guy's talking to me, I think kind of builds a mentality through the physical training.
In your experience, you talk about filming everything. With your guards, are there things that you see you like tend to consistently be like pointing out to them, or things that maybe they don't notice until they see it on film? What sort of things do maybe players that, like your guards, aren't even really aware of until they see themselves doing it or not doing it on film?
Well, the first one jumps out to me right away is without the ball in their hand. I think a lot of kids believe that they are sprinting and that they are playing hard on defense, meaning they're physically very active. And then when they see themselves on film, you're not sprinting. Your hands are not up. You're not all the way in the gap where we want you to be. When we're trapping out of some kind of a zone trap, you're not in the right location. Your footwork is incorrect. And, a lot of times we just roll the film and ask, what do you see? And at first, their ego's there and they don't want to say that they're wrong. But after a couple of sessions, and a session might be the whole team, it might be one-on-one, it might be 3 coaches and 1 player, and they might be 3 minutes long. It's not like we're in there for an hour and a half breaking down every second of film. But once they see that, they start to become a little bit more self-critical, with the intention of maximizing what they can do. So it's all a process, man, of trying to teach them to coach themselves and lead themselves.
What's really fascinating about that is I've had sessions with girls before with film, and they're like the opposite. They think they're doing everything wrong. They don't think they do anything right ever. They're the hardest critics on themselves. And like if you ask them, it's like, oh, I'm so embarrassed, I did this, and they're just so like overcorrect. And I'm like, no, this is actually good. What are you talking about? It's just funny sometimes the differences that you get. But I will agree though. I think that working hard when you actually see it on film, or like see yourself on film, you're like, oh, that's what I look like. Like I thought I was given a lot more than that sometimes. But it's interesting what film can reveal. And I think that maybe, and I'll let you speak to this, for a lot of your players, maybe they haven't really watched themselves too much on film. I think a lot of players come in to high school programs really not knowing what they look like when they play, or not really have somebody who's been able to sit down with them and kind of break these things down with them. And it's really eye-opening.
Well, the eye in the sky doesn't lie, right? And so just that that idea of you might perceive it as one way. I mean, as a coach, we during games, when we're on the road, we will have our managers film directly across from the bench, and during timeouts, when a free throw is going on, just to watch players and coaches' body language. And I'll be totally honest with you, I'll be the first to admit it. I'm asking them to have positive body language, and I see myself countless times on film where I fail, right?
Yeah,
And we'll talk about that, and we display that, right? Here's a moment where I messed up. So it's not about being perfect, guys. It's about being progressive, right? Can I learn from this?
Yeah. Progress over perfection.
Yep.
I've used that before, and I like that. Now, when it comes to your guards being the on the court leaders and the ones who are the floor generals running the offense, as many coaches talk about, right? Guards are sometimes the coach on the court, so to speak.
Yep.
What goes into getting your guards to that level? I know you mentioned how, those players got to want that responsibility. They want to be that person. So when you get a player who's ready to step into that sort of role, how do you work with that guard to get them to be the leader and the floor general on the court?
Well, a good starting point, I think for all coaches is how do you identify
Mm-hmm.
that player or those players, right? So
Okay,
for
yeah.
us, one of the things that we do is we'll play 5-on-5 and let them pick their teams. Or maybe the next session we'll pick the teams, and literally we'll just watch who goes to the basketball. Like a guard that I believe can become an elite guard, that player wants the basketball in their hands at all times. And not a selfish, like, give it to me, but like if there's a rebound, they're running up asking for the basketball. If there's a key moment, there's 12 seconds left running on the clock, they're down one in a pickup game, they're running to get the basketball. So once you identify that player, now it's just about building them into a leader. Because if they have the want to, they're going to be passionate, they're going to be teachable, they're going to be trainable. But leadership to me really is the thing that separates that. So I just think it's a lot of intentional questions and a lot of intentional teaching to that player. So I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can think of a couple of them right now. But years ago, another coach and I were talking about this, and I remember we came up with a list of 5 things that an elite guard, an elite point guard should really have. And the ones that are jumping out to me right now, at the top of my head, is you always got to know time and situation. You always got to know foul situation for your team. Meaning, if I've got a player on the court that's got 4 fouls, I'm probably not going to call a play, or the coach is not going to call a play for that player to go to the rim, right? And just being able to see beyond the surface level. And like I said, we run a hybrid motion. So when we have those elite guards, I mean, for lack of a better way of saying it, we really take our hands off on the offensive end and let them go to work. We had, Willow Canyons had 4 players selected to the all-state team in school history. 3 of those have come in the last 7 years with our coaching staff. And we had the only 2-time guy who graduated in 2022. And man, he was a maestro with our offense. Like, kids got shots in the right places. He knew when to get to the free throw line for himself. He knew when to feed the big guy every once in a while so that he'd keep playing hard. Like, he just seemed to have this next level vision. And I mean, I think we were blessed to have him. I don't know that we taught him how to do that. I think maybe we added 1 or 2 things along the way. But he just came in at a very, very high level. And all those things that I talked about, gym rat, wanted to watch film, first one in the gym, last one out of the gym most nights, like that's who he was. And like I said, we got a couple of young guys that I'm very excited about because they have a lot of those same characteristics.
Yeah, that is To have a player, just thinking of that situation, have a player who knows that, like you said, like the big guys got to get a touch because they're working hard and they got to be rewarded and get the ball and on the offensive end, like just have that sense. I mean, if you can get a guard like that who's got that kind of thinking going on, I just imagine the amount of things you would be able to run. It very much is, as you said, about being hands off because you have a coach. He's just out there playing, right? He's out
Mm-hmm.
there and you don't
Yep.
have to say a lot to him. And um one of the things that I've always thought was kind of a interesting teaching point, especially with guards, and I was curious your thoughts on that, is guards, their responsibility to run the offense and make sure people are involved versus also taking advantage of their own opportunities to score and call their own number. The idea of
Mm-hmm.
being the facilitator versus like, hey, like I see an opening, I'm attacking and I'm going. Is that something that you have to explicitly teach? Is it just a function of the offense that you run? How does that like kind of teaching point work out?
Well, we last year was was a tough year.
Hmm.
We finished the season 1-11, started the season 12-2. 12-3. I
Okay.
apologize. So we kind of had a tale of two seasons. And part of that was we had a very, very skilled uh, young man who I think can become an elite player. Sophomore, he got injured. And so we had some other guys that I think were playing a little bit out of position for their age and development. Now, I think both of them have tremendously improved in the
Hmm.
last 6 months. So I'm very excited for them. But um, all that to say is we had trained the team to play one way, and then we didn't really have time because obviously once you're in January, right? Once you get into the bulk of your conference games and your region games,
Yep.
it's play, day off. There's a wrestling match, so you can't get in the gym, whatever. Um, and so I think what we would have liked to have done is controlled the offense a little bit more, but we couldn't because we really didn't have that practice time. So, and I'm not blaming that on anybody but our coaching staff. That starts and ends with me as the head coach. I needed to do a better job at preparing our team, and hopefully, we've made some adjustments. But I do think there's an element of you have to teach that, and I think if you film and you ask a lot of questions, that will help you a lot as a coach to be able to get those players to see the situation and to have a better feel. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're playing a free flowing offense, your players have to have feel.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Otherwise you might as well just be a joystick coach and call a set every time down. And there's nothing wrong with that either, right? There's many, many ways to win a basketball game. Um, but if you want to run kind of a more motion free, then yeah, I think you got to invest the time on teaching when and how and where to get yours and to set other players up.
And to your point, especially if you have younger players, and I know this is always hard as a coach to do, but if you're going to have that free flowing style, then you got to be willing to be okay with your players making mistakes or making the wrong choice or making the wrong decision. And I
Yep.
think that those are some of the best learning tools that come out of
Yep.
it. Now, I know we obviously don't like when it happens at the moment, but it sounds
Yeah.
like that's something that you're willing to work with and
Yep.
learn with because then you
Yep.
have that film session, right? That
So
you could.
we have a term, sorry to cut you off.
No, no,
We
you're
have a
good. I was done.
term, good turnover. And so we've I want to say we own the top 5 numbers in steals in program history, but I want to say we also own the top 3 or 4 turnovers in program history, right? Season by season. And then probably one of the craziest stats is we had the second most or third most, I apologize, third most assists in school history last year. And we made the 5th most threes in Arizona history last year while going 1-11. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. Like
Yeah.
we shot the heck out of it. But here's why is if we didn't shoot the three, we likely turned it over. And a lot of those were bad turnovers. Now, we had probably 4 to 5 a game that are good turnovers. So for us, a good turnover, a point guard gets the ball on an outlet or a rebound and immediately throws it in the front court when we have an advantage, a 1-on-0, a 2-on-1. We can kick it up the sideline and get into our early offense. Well, occasionally they'll throw it out of bounds or a player will fumble it, or that's a good turnover for us, right? We're going to live with several of those per game. So again, all of this goes back to the very first question. How do you holistically build your program? We want to play really fast. We want to play really free flowing. So, we're going to have to make some concessions because you can't control everything. Obviously, you have to be willing to have some points where you're going to suffer a little bit.
Yeah, and you have to be okay, and it's never fun to have to be okay with it. But I mean, like as you said, there are some mistakes, and for me as well to add to that, there's mistakes where if I can see what you were trying to do, and I knew like, okay, this is what you were looking at, and I can kind of get in your head and understand what you were thinking, like I can live with that sort of thing. Not happy in the moment, but if I can get a sense of what you were trying to do or what you were looking for, like you saw that opening to make that pass, but like you were a split second too late, or the cutter was a split second, like, okay, at least I know what was happening there and we can clean that up, sort of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Got to pick and choose.
Yeah, for sure. I would be remiss if if I didn't bring this up, and it's a very interesting conversation, especially when it comes to guards. A lot of players have trainers, they have a lot of skill trainers that they work with, and a lot of them do really good stuff. But I've always been very fascinated at the amount of dribbling work and the amount of stuff in terms of handling the ball that players do, especially if you want an offense where there's a lot of good ball movement and a lot of passing. It's very interesting the amount of attention that is given to dribbling. When you're developing guards and think about like the ball handling in particular, is that a point of emphasis, or are you of the mindset of like, well, we don't need to do a lot, you shouldn't be dribbling a lot? Like, what's kind of the ball handling aspect of working with your guards?
Yeah, I would say functional. So like we define when we want to dribble. Like it's one of the things that we talk about in our offense, right? So you should dribble to get yourself a shot, get a teammate a shot, get yourself out of trouble. And notice that I paused because that's it. I mean, like those are really the only times that we should be putting the basketball on the ground. And we obviously, that's kind of tongue in cheek a little bit, but like we drill efficiency. So like I said, when we talk about training layups, training floaters, training how do we get to certain spots on the court, we're always trying to do that in the least amount of dribbles possible. So can you get to the nail in 3 dribbles? Can you get to the nail in 2 dribbles? If you watch us play, what you'll see on film or in person is that our guards jab a ton. We ball fake, we pass fake, we jab, and we go. And again, it's all with the intention of being efficient. So, I would say yes, if you want an elite guard, they better be able to have the ball on a string. So you have to train ball handling. But if it's just I'm dribbling 2 basketballs for the sake of doing it, I don't know really what you're getting out of that. But if you can teach the function, we retreat dribble on this part of the court when we're being trapped so that we can swing it to the opposite side. When you catch it on a reversal and the slot, you should immediately be looking to swing it again. And if you can't, well, now it's natural to ball fake and dribble. Now you should be trying to penetrate the center part of the defense. So, like, again, it's concepts and getting them to imagine where's the defense going to be, how's the defense going to react. But no, I mean, dribbling for the sake of dribbling to me is absolutely pointless. But you definitely need, if you're going to have good ball handlers, they obviously need to be working on that. So we work on ball handling. We dedicate about an 8-minute block every practice, every training session to it. And then there's some variety of ball handling embedded into every other thing that we do on an offensive training standpoint, but it's all with purpose.
Yeah, and that's one of the interesting things I think about teaching and working on a lot of ball handling is there's obviously stuff you can do in isolation that'll be helpful, but I feel like so much of handling the ball and protecting the ball, using a retreat dribble, a lot of that is kind of comes within the function of the offense, like when these moves need to be done or what's happening. It's ball handling is great in isolation, but as you kind of mentioned, it's what purpose does it serve within the flow of your offense, and why is every dribble that's being taken, like why is that dribble being taken, like what is happening that requires that dribble to take place, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what it sounds like. You're like everything has a purpose, and every dribble that a player
Yeah.
takes needs to have some intentionality to it.
Yeah, I think it's maddening a little bit for our coaching staff because they kind of joke all the time, and my wife does too, that I'm Russell Crowe from A Beautiful Mind a little bit. But like I think it's maddening, but at the same time, basketball is an ever evolving game.
Sure.
And obviously not just the history of it, but literally every pickup game, every scrimmage, every state playoff game, like you're training for all the different possibilities of each moment and recognizing that each moment evolves. So in this, I don't know, maybe you could speak to this between the boy and girl teaching, but this was one of the struggles that I had when I was coaching that 7th grade girls team is they did exactly what I told them. And in a lot of ways that was great. But when the game evolved, the challenge was getting them to that next level to be able to make decisions. And this goes hand in hand, I guess, with the training aspect that we're talking about, is getting them to be able to determine their own next course of action. So anyways, I just think the more thought process that can be put into it with collaboration between player and coach through those questions, the better off you're going to be in the long run.
Yeah, I've in my experience of coaching girls, to add on, since you wanted my thoughts, I think that they're all the teams that I've coached are very good listeners, and they're very good at listening and applying. But it is, as you kind of mentioned, sometimes it's like to the T of like exactly what it is I told them to do, and that's what they'll do sometimes. And you really have to, for me in my experience, empower the players with that trust and let them know, like, I believe in you. And I don't know if we as coaches maybe do that as much as we should. We tend to be so hard on our players sometimes that I think that we can shake their confidence and not make them want to, just be relaxed and free flowing and playing and using their own brain. And that's always been something I've had to work on, because I never want my players to be reactive or always having to be waiting on me. And so it's a journey for me too. But I've told this before, but I remember I had once a girl. We got the defensive rebound. We had a beautiful outlet pass, and the girl got the ball at about half court, and nobody was in nobody was in her way. She could have walked and gotten a layup, but she just completely like stopped and waited because she thought that we needed to run something, like run a set. And I was like, oh no, like I have not given you don't have confidence in yourself. You literally had a wide open layup, but thought I was going to be mad at you because we were trying to run something. And so I'll always remember that. That was something. Guards have the unique task of having to be both a great passer as well as a great shooter and a great finisher. So when working with players, do you focus more on one aspect than the other? Does it come down to the player and their skill set or ability, or how do you kind of work with your guards to get them so that they're capable scoring and passing as well?
I think we train both. I think we probably are 60-40 with some players, and in either 60 on shooting, 40 on passing. But for the style that we want to play, we need players that can do it all. You know what I mean? Like if we have a dead spot on the court, our offense stalls. And so yeah, I mean, I think the answer is you want to obviously adjust the gauge to your system and how you want to do things, but it's pretty easy to beat you. I can diagram a defense to beat you if you only have one player that you want running your offense and passing. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
really easy to defend. It's really difficult to defend when you have 4 or 5 players on the court that can all dribble, shoot, pass, and obviously to varying degrees. But, I think varsity boys basketball in the second biggest classification in Arizona, which I know, 15 years ago, maybe you would say, oh, it's Arizona. But I mean, 2
Oh, I
years
know.
ago, we had 3 guys from Arizona high school taken from Arizona high schools in the first 20 picks, I think, in the NBA. So, it's definitely a different ball game. So, I definitely think you got to train both if you want to be competitive.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that players have to, and I'd be curious about your thoughts on this, about how much is expected for your players in terms of working on getting shots up or getting on a gun and things like that. Is that there's
Yeah,
a lot that we try to do with getting shots up in practice and making sure within the flow of the offense, but I think there
yeah,
is still something to be said about it. You want to be a great shooter, you gotta be that one in the gym before
yeah,
practice, after practice. And so
yeah.
I imagine that your great guards that you've had, those ones who are great on all ends, like they're probably the ones getting a lot of shots up and don't need to be told to either.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the blessings, going back to the very beginning when I said, it's been tough to get Willow to the place that I think it's at, and
Hmm.
it's even tougher right now trying to take it to this next level. We went from being, I think, a laughing stock to, oh man, they're going to compete, to, we can pretty much guarantee a W against some weaker teams. And now we're trying to go to, we can knock off some of the tougher teams in the state. That's that next level we're trying to get to. But in order to get there, we've preached that you got to be a gym rat. Like you have to want to be in the gym. And the reason why I said I feel pretty blessed is at this point, man, I don't know too many of the kids that are in our program that are not gym rats.
That's great.
And I probably am the supreme gym rat. Like I'm gonna be there later tonight. Like the gym is always open. We have 8 coaches, and we rotate, 5:30 a.m. sessions with kids that ask. We come in on Saturday afternoons and rotate that. Like our line to our program is, if you ask to be in the gym, we always want to find a way to say yes. And at first nobody took me up on that. So I had to go chase kids. Hey man, I really think you should get in the gym. Hey, I got a workout for you. I really think you need to be in the gym. And then once we had a couple of those guys get in the gym, then I just set a rule. Hey, you can't come by yourself.
Oh,
And
I like that. Yeah, that's
and
good.
and then it became contagious. So like I said, I think we're at a point now where the majority of the
They're coming.
program,
Yeah, no, it sounds like they're just coming to the gym. They're ready. You don't need to tell them.
yeah,
Oh, that's fantastic. You
yeah,
said you're going later today on a Sunday. Ooh, that is next level stuff there. But like for you now, like I imagine you get to that point where like you don't have to say anything, and now your players are getting on each other. It's like, hey, I'm putting all this work in the gym. Where are
yeah,
you at? Like you better be there
yep,
too, and it just builds
yep,
on itself, I
yep,
imagine. That
yep.
is awesome.
No,
Um,
you're exactly right. And um, I was a little nervous because the results, last year, like I said, we struggled at the end. I was a little nervous, like, hey, is this going to shift our culture a little bit? And you know, pleasantly surprised, I guess, that it absolutely has not. Um, so yeah, I just think, again, you got to choose as a coach, what are the things that you want to do, right? So for me, I wanted our program to be one that served the community. Well, you know as well as I do, there's club opportunities every day, every weekend. So how do we open our gyms so that parents and kids don't feel like they have to be traveling every weekend and spending thousands of dollars? If we open the gym on a Friday night and charge $5 to get in or $10 to get in so we could pay the rental, and they know that they're going to have a chance to shoot, they're going to have a chance to play pickup, and they might have a coach there that is going to do more than just sit. They're going to train them, and that's really where we started. And then now, like I said, it's kind of grown to, we have a youth program that we, a feeder team that we run, and we run tournaments out of the school, and just all that stuff that you want to be able to do if you're trying to attract the gym rats to stay at their home school, which is, always a challenge as well.
Especially out here in Arizona.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a topic of its own debate too. Just
For
the
sure.
recruiting. Yeah. Before we hit our concluding segment, I was really curious about this and the idea of, if you're going to be an elite guard, you're going to be the leader on the court. You got to be a guy or girl who's going to get on your teammates, going to be the
Yeah.
coach on the floor, and it can be isolating to kind of have to be the leader of the team. Like you're not a coach, but you are kind of a coach because you're a coach on the floor. But at the same time, obviously, you need to be coached as well. You're kind of in a very unique position. And I was curious about, do you think the ability for a guard, an elite guard, to get on their team and to be a floor general and to tell them what to do and get on them and refocus them, is that a skill, that leadership skill, is that something that can be taught or brought out of somebody, or do you think like some players just have it or don't? What goes into bringing that side of elite guard play, where they're vocal, they're talking, and they're leading with their, by example, and with their voice, their teammates? What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that leadership is a skill that can be taught. And for us, I believe that it's a differentiator. I think you're 1000% correct. It's a very difficult position to be in. Leadership is lonely. And whether you are the leader of the program as the head coach, or you are the leader of the team as, an elite guard, a point guard, whatever you want to call them, we ironically call our point guards lead guards. You're not a point guard, you're a lead guard. And so you have to lead. And it's uncomfortable. So if you'd rather be a guard and not a lead guard, that's fine. But you're now in a pool of 20 guys competing for 6 spots or 7 spots, as opposed to being in a pool of 8 competing for 4. You know what I mean? Or however you want to break that up. So it's up to you, but here are the requirements. And, we're very clear about, you need to communicate. You need to be both vocal and physically leading. And then we define that for them, right? So, for example, communication on defense. We just this year, we've refined how we want to teach that. So we have a chain of command, or a chain of directions, and it all starts with one call, and that's, I've got the basketball. So as a lead guard, if we put you with 4 other players and we're playing pickup and your teammates don't do that, if we don't see you get on them about that, your team loses. Like, I don't care if you beat them 7-0 or 9-0. We play our pickup games to 9 by 2s and 3s. It doesn't matter. You lost. And the reason why is you failed as a leader right now. So get off the court, take a deep breath, figure it out. And when you get back on, you get another opportunity. So I think you need to, if you want them to lead, you as the coach have to hold them accountable. Because, countless coaches have said some form of this, but as a coach, you're either allowing it to happen or teaching it to happen, right? Like you're teaching it or you're tolerating it. And so if I'm asking you to lead and you don't, well, now I have a choice. I can tolerate the fact that my leaders don't lead, or I can address it. Right. And
Yeah.
so, again, you have to define it for them. You have to give them tangible actions of exactly what it is that you're wanting. And then you got to hold them accountable to do it.
One of that saying that you just said reminds me of one of my favorite teaching or coaching sayings, which is what you permit is what you promote. And like
Exactly.
that, yeah, like yeah. Not that's for sure. I to add on to your point, I 100% agree with what you said. Is I really do think if you really want your guards to be that leader, any player to like be in that leadership role, like you have to really be available for your player because
Yeah.
like you said, it's very isolating. It can get very lonely and
Yeah.
you could feel like nobody, like that player can feel like nobody, like their teammates might get like frustrated at them. They're frustrated at their teammates, this with their coaches. Like you got to be that ear for them. You got to console them.
Yep.
You got to bring it up because leadership's tough. Leadership is, especially for to be a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old asking that responsibility, like
Yep.
it's a process. and
Yeah.
and but man, if they get that down and they leave your program feeling like they can lead, I think that just ties into what you were talking about servant leadership, man. They will be ready by the time they graduate to lead in whatever it is that they want to do.
That's the hope.
No, that's a lot of fun. And so, last question before we hit our concluding segment, and I'm curious about with your team right now, if the guards that you got, what are you looking at for them as their next step? What are you hoping for this group that you have is kind of their next evolution or the next level that you're hoping they're reaching in this upcoming season?
Man, that's a great question. I
That's what
got,
I'm here for.
yeah. This was off the questions that you had sent me. So those I was prepared for the most part.
And I threw this curveball on you now.
Yeah, no,
Well,
that's
you
okay. Um, man, I'll tell you this, man. Like I said, we had a very young group last year. We knew we were going to struggle. We knew that we were lacking some leadership, and we were putting a lot on the shoulders of some very young players and some very inexperienced seniors. And our seniors last year gave us everything they could, but it just wasn't enough. And so we made the decision that we were going to combine our varsity and JV practice. So we had 21 players every day in our practices. And we had, like I said, a large coaching staff. We divvied out our practice so that everybody got, a ton of training, a ton of coaching. And it was all with the intention of, we don't want to have to teach what it's like to be on a varsity team again. Like, you need to understand the expectations, the intensity, the physicality, what it's like to travel, what it's like to, you know, unfortunately take a beating on the chin and have to get
yeah.
up the next morning and travel 2 hours. Like, you need to figure that out right now as a freshman, as a sophomore, and you need to be prepared to do the work. And what I'll tell you is, like I said, I was a little nervous that maybe our culture would drop a little bit, that maybe kids would feel defeated,
Yeah.
because it's really hard to lose 9 in a row and watch your playoff hopes just dwindle because you just know it's going to be really, really difficult to win. Um, these kids are so determined. Like, we might not win every game this season, but I'll tell you what, man, they're going to fight more than they did last year. And we fought every game last year.
Yeah.
So I really think if we can learn to execute in key moments, we lost a couple games by 3 or 4 points last year. You lose those games on a loose ball in the second quarter. You know what I mean? Like, you
Sure.
don't really lose that game by missing the free throws in the final minute, or a kid making a lucky shot, or like, that's not when you lost it. You lost it because you had 5 possessions in a row and turned it over 3 times to start the third quarter. Like all that stuff.
All
And,
builds. Yeah.
and so they're learning, they're growing, they're determined. So I really think for us, as I kind of word vomited there to get the thought out, it's just we need to learn to execute.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, right? It's the process. It's the process, knowing there's going to be struggles, knowing the region that you're into. Like it's, I think you said those games, those are bloodbath games, right? And it's going to be, but I think you're going to see a lot of growth though, and I think that's going
Yeah.
to be the fun part. And it's just growth though. It's not a straight line that growth takes uphill. It's
Well,
peaks and valleys and everything in between. And but no, that's awesome, and that's going to be fun to follow along with. To
yeah.
wrap up, Coach, I give every guest a couple questions to wrap up with, and this first one is thinking back on your coaching career. What is a moment from your coaching career that you went through that you think others listening would be able to learn from?
Man, there are so many moments. I'll start with this, or I'll just share this one. We've got a varsity assistant. He's been with us for 2 years, and young guy, wants to be a head coach. And he's had some opportunities, interviewed for a couple jobs. Has asked me about a couple jobs. That's one of the things on our staff. Again, I've been fortunate. We've had some guys come in and work with us, and their hope is to become a head coach. So, we kind of try to prep them for that. We've had 3 coaches in the 7 years go and take over other programs.
Nice.
And Coach Scott, I think, will be the 4th really soon. If you're a young coach, if you're an assistant and you're looking for a job, I would say this: find the right job. There's a lot of jobs out there, man. It's really, really hard to be a high school head coach these days. And so, you could just look in our state, there's 20 to 30 jobs on the boys' side, let alone on the girls' side. You add probably another 10 to 15 or even more every year. So if you want to be a head coach, the opportunity will be there, but you need to find the right job. But what I mean by that is, does the admin have a similar vision to you? Do you connect with the community that the school is in? Are you going to be able to speak into the lives of the community? Because if you're not, that's going to be really, really hard. Can you win? You know what I mean? In order for us to teach these life lessons that we're trying to teach in our program, we got to win occasionally. Otherwise, people are going to go, you have no clue what you're talking about. You know what I mean? So, can you do those things? And so I would just say, like, in my experience, when I was at Liberty, it was with the intention of coming there, serving, and then going. And I had a couple jobs come my way, and my head coach at the time just said, you know what, I don't think that's the right job for you. Like, you got a young family. It's not smart to drive 40 minutes one way to get to work, and so anyway, so just find the right job, because I think it will pay dividends with everything that you want to do.
Yeah. And be patient, right?
Yeah.
Because when you find it, it's great.
Yeah.
And I've unfortunately known some coaches who've taken some jobs that maybe weren't the best fit, and it really did, I think, for some of them, derailed their career or put them on a real tough path to recover from. And I've
Yeah.
also known others who waited for years and then got the position they were wanting, and they flourished. So
Yeah.
no, I like that a lot.
Well,
Uh,
it's
Go
funny
ahead.
that you say that. It's funny that you say that, because when I took the Willow job,
Yeah.
there were a couple people who called me, "Hey, man, that was a terrible decision,"
Oh,
and
uh,
I kind of took that as a chip on my shoulder, and I never have said anything to those guys, no, nor would I, because it's not about them. But it was a good motivator for wanting to double down on certain things. Because when people express their disbelief, I think if you're a high achiever, it's fun to try to figure out a way to make sure that you achieve.
Well,
So
yeah. I mean, if somebody says that to me, then I'm gonna think, okay, either one, you doubt me, or two, you doubt the players I'm about to coach. Like either way, like I'm not gonna take that well. So I'll use that as any extra motivation I can
yeah,
get. So no,
yeah.
I like that, and look where you are now. Look where Willow Canyon is now. So that's awesome. To wrap up, Coach, the last question I ask every guest is, well, it's not even a question. It's me giving you what I call a 60-second soapbox, but I won't time you, so you're welcome to go over that 60 seconds. but it's your platform to kind of get out a final message, a final thought, a closing idea, just something in general related to the topic or otherwise. Anything you want to leave the listeners with. It's your soapbox. You can take it wherever it is that you want. So I'm just going to go ahead and give you the floor, Coach, and I'm just going to let you take it from here.
This will be the shortest that I speak because that was a good way of telling me I'm long-winded. But I would challenge all the coaches listening. You have maybe 4 years with each one of these young people that are in your program, and you have an opportunity to make an impact that is going to last a lifetime. And if you're a young coach, that might go in one ear and out the other. If you're an older coach, maybe you are a little bit more aware of that. But time is really fleeting, and you're investing hours and hours and hours in the gym. I would challenge you to think intentionally about how you can leave an impact that will empower your players to serve the world around them and to benefit them for their whole lives. Like, winning is great, and we should do everything we can to put them in a position to be successful. But we want to coach them for life. So be intentional. Understand that you have a very limited window of time to speak into their lives. Take full advantage of it, and let all the chips fall where they may.
Awesome. Well spoken. I like that a lot. It's funny. 4 years in some senses seems like a lot of time. In this coaching thing, no. 4 years just flies by. I absolutely agree. Coach Colletti, thank you so much for coming on, talking about guards, basketball, program building, culture, servant leadership, holistic coaching. We covered a lot. I'm looking forward to following your journey as you are local to me as well. So best of luck this coming year, and I hope it goes great. Sounds like you got a great thing going, and keep it up, Coach. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I wish you the best of luck as well at your school this year. I know we put in a lot of time and effort, so it's fun to be able to build these connections and relationships so that you can cheer each other on. And as long as you're not playing our girls team, I hope you go undefeated.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.